Hello and welcome to our podcast named Detours. This podcast embraces the unexpected twists and turns that shapes the journeys of our lives that God sends us down. I'm your host and fellow traveler, Mike. I'm here with my beautiful wife, Deb, and we invite you to join us on this exploration of uncharted territories we encounter along the way. So without further ado, let's dive into this episode. Hello, Detours family.
Hi, guys.
Good to see you, Deb.
Yeah, you too, babe.
As always, thank you guys for joining us. We are here for another episode. We are in season 4 somewhere. I don't even remember the episode number.
You know?
No, I don't know. But, I'm...
Okay.
Yeah, we're somewhere midway through season 4, I think. We're talking about God... Mostly closing doors is kind of the theme, I suppose you would say, of the season thus far.
Opening, closing, a little bit of both.
What that looks like. But today we're going to talk about, you and I had our names called on a mission trip that came about through Calvary, Fort Lauderdale.
Yes.
Definitely a unique mission trip. It was not like going to... Guatemala or El Salvador and helping an orphanage or build a church. It was nothing like that.
No.
This came about, it was at the breakout of the war between Russia and Ukraine. What has that been now? A year and a half?
No.
2 years?
2 years,
something like
probably.
That? Whatever that has been, we had an opportunity come up at Calvary, Fort Lauderdale to go over and go to Poland and work with the refugees that were coming across the border. So very interesting situation. Give you guys, the listeners, some background. When the war broke out, Calvary Fort Lauderdale went and rented a facility in Italy and a facility in Germany. They rented a castle. We're not talking about a Disney castle, but just a German castle, basically a large. I think it was like 10 or 12 bedroom
like
place, as well as kind of they rented out an entire bed and breakfast that was in Italy. That was a bit larger. I think that was like 20 rooms, something along those lines. And they had teams in Germany receiving people at the castle, and they had teams in Italy that were there receiving people at that bed and breakfast. But we didn't go with the teams, did we?
No, I really thought when you originally brought it to me, it was, we're going with Calvary Chapel to do this mission trip. I guess I heard what I wanted to hear. Because you were describing it, and in my head, I was like, it's a bunch of us.
Well, and typically mission trips are you going with, a dozen people, again, to go build a church and,
something to help out.
El Salvador or, wherever you're going to go.
Right.
You're going on a mission trip to Haiti, But, you're usually going with other people.
Right. And it wasn't until, like, the day before we board, and we dialogued about it again, and you're like, it's us. And I'm like,
we're the team.
What do you mean? Just us? Just me and you? And you're like, yeah, I told you that. And I was like, I kind of racked my brain and like re-listened to the conversation in my head. And I was just like, oh my gosh, you did tell me that. But just us?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was...
So there were technically 3 teams. There was a team, like I said, that was in Germany, another team that was in Italy, but they needed a couple of people to actually go to the Ukrainian border in Poland. We chose Poland because I don't remember the numbers anymore, but I think it's something like 5 border crossings from Ukraine into Poland. It was the highest number of any country. So they sent us into Poland when the war broke out. So what happened, we have some very dear friends that are missionaries now that went ahead of us. And they were there for the very first 2 weeks of the war. And you kind of went in rotation because your sleeping schedule's thrown off. You're when you get a phone call, doesn't matter what time of day over there or night, that means it's time to move. And that's kind of part of what we want to talk about today was God opening and closing doors. Those phone calls, I've never been in a situation in my life where I saw God opening and closing doors so quickly and so clearly.
Distinctly, yes. Yeah.
But so the third team that they needed. So again, the team that went to Germany was probably 10 people. The team that went to Italy was another 10 people, and we were the team,
Just
you
us.
and I. That so we had a couple of missionaries that are missionaries in Italy that went over to Poland ahead of us to kind of set the stage. And
Give direction.
yeah, start getting bearings of what you see on CNN and Fox and all this. And okay, great. What's actually happening there? Boots on the ground. So this couple went a couple of weeks ahead of me. I went before you.
Yes.
But you really have very odd hours, very odd sleeping schedules and things like that. So as a team, at least in Poland, you're only there for a few weeks because you're just exhausted by the end of it. So as this missionary team was kind of winding down their stay over there, working for the church, they had no problem sending me over there. Not worrying about vacation time or this, that, and the other. I certainly working for the church has definite advantages, and that was one of the advantages. You didn't have that advantage, so you actually you had to wait a week,
Right,
to get all the time off from work and vacation approved and so on and so forth. So I went a week ahead of you to Poland. And I think, we both landed in Warsaw. We both flew from, I think, Miami. Yep. Miami had a direct flight from Miami to Warsaw. It was, 9-10 hour flight, whatever it was.
Yeah, it was long.
And it's staggering because the very first open door is just the fact that I work at a church that has the resources to be able to pull something like this off. Most churches can't pull off what we did. They don't have financial resources. We had all sorts of partnerships all around the world. Calvary Chapel is a huge name in the church world, and Calvary Fort Lauderdale, we're the largest on the East Coast, to my knowledge. I don't know how big we are in the grand scheme of things, but we're a big enough church that we have financial resources. We have tons of connections all over the world.
Praise God.
Absolutely. And Calvary.
And that's from faithful tithers, people who, donate to the church, people who give a 10% or more every week.
Yeah. And it was oddly enough, I guess I can even rewind a little bit more. I have a gentleman that works on my team. So I do all the digital stuff for Calvary Fort Lauderdale, working on the website, working, on the mobile app and so on and so forth. And I had a gentleman on my team that said, "Hey, Mike, this war in Poland is so sad. We should build a landing page on the website where people can leave a donation for the people in Ukraine and the war and everything that's going on. So I don't have the right to say yes or no to something like that where we're raising finances." So I took it to our leadership and said, "Hey, this gentleman on my team he has this idea and he has this burden on his heart." And, the accounting department and our executive said, "Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's go ahead and create a landing page." And we didn't really do much with it. And I can't remember if our lead pastor mentioned it from the pulpit or not that weekend. We might have sent one email, but we literally raised $1 million in 18 days.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And we had no...
Glory to God.
Yeah. We thought... I don't even know what we thought we were going to raise. Whether it was... I said $1 million. I meant to say $250,000 in 18 days. We raised $250,000 in 18 days. I think in my head, I had a plan. Okay, that'd be great if we could raise $50,000 and send some food over or something like that. And lo and behold, a little over 2 weeks, we had over $250,000. And all of a sudden we had to kind of create a committee to go, okay, the congregation has entrusted us with this kind of money. What are we going to do with it? And so we came up with this plan of, again, this castle over in Germany that we were going to rent out for a year, and the same thing over in Italy, this bed and breakfast that was kind of more or less closed. Nobody was staying in it. and we rented the whole thing out again for a year.
So the goal was to bring these refugees for a year and to give them the gospel and to give them an opportunity to get jobs. And
well, yeah, that's once we wrapped our heads around everything,
right.
You know, when the missionaries that were before us went over to Ukraine, at that point we had kind of turned the landing page live, and it was, you know, people were donating, but we didn't know what was going on, boots on the ground. We didn't know, we had no plans on people making donations. We knew that they would come in because the people in Fort Lauderdale are generous, and they do love to help out, but we didn't have any plans yet. And so as money started coming in, and as the missionaries were calling us in the States, kind of going, hey, there's real opportunity. Basically, what they saw was, you know, Putin decides he's going to go to war, and he starts attacking all these villages and so on and so forth. So there's a mass exodus from Ukraine into Poland. And if you can imagine, it was like everybody getting on an escalator to go from one floor to another. They're going on train systems and everything they can find to go from one country to another. But when they got to the top of the escalator, the people on the second floor spoke a totally different language. Mm-hmm. Their driver's license was no longer valid. Their currency was no longer relevant. And it was millions of people. So imagine a person that the very first person gets to the top of the escalator, everyone else is behind them, and they just stop because they don't know where to go. Sure. They had no family. You know, Ukraine and Poland, those languages share nothing in common.
They're very different.
That.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's the picture is all of a sudden, all these people that are behind the first person on the escalator, that front person in front isn't going anywhere because they have nowhere to go. They have no job. They have no money. Their husbands are back fighting the war. I think at the time it was, if you were a male between the ages of 18, what was it? 18 and 65 or something.
No, I don't think it was that high. I think it was like 55.
Maybe it was 50. It's something along those lines.
Able-bodied, yeah. 18 to 55.
You were required to stay. You could not leave the country because they needed you to go to war. And there was an exception. I think if you had 3 kids or more,
that was the rule.
You were allowed to head out so that you could care for your family.
Take care of your family.
So it was mostly women and children that were mass exiting. Their husbands are left behind in Ukraine. So the leaders of the household you're without the leader of the household. The wives and kids are probably terrified.
Yeah, just think about the vulnerability of being a mom and, grabbing your young kids and crossing a border. And, we saw pictures of, and videos of bombs in their backyard, and the sheer fear of what's the plan? How do I take care of my kids? Yeah. A lot of emotion.
Tremendous. Yeah, it was very emotionally charged.
Ooh, yes.
In completely different ways for us versus them. It was very emotionally charged. So that's what the assessment of the situation that comes back to Calvary Fort Lauderdale from the missionaries that were there. They're from Italy, but they're over in Ukraine. They start giving us this feedback. They head over to Poland. They start giving us this feedback. Hey, there are just people sitting here at the border and they have nowhere to go. There's nothing we can do. So that's when Calvary decides, okay, what happens if we go find properties and we start creating, we're so connected in the church. There's work that we can create for these people. Mm-hmm. We can keep their families together. We can give them living situations. They can stay there up to a year. At that point, nobody thought the war would drag out as long as it has. So really that was the feedback that Calvary Fort Lauderdale started to get. And we're sitting here on $250,000, and all of a sudden, we go, okay, we formulate this plan. Okay, we're going to go rent these 2 facilities. Mm-hmm. We're going to send teams over there. But that third team needs to go to Poland, and it needs to be a husband and wife. It can't be 2 women. Can't be 2 men. It's got to be a husband and wife team.
I think speaking to that is just having you have to have a woman there too to comfort the women. And I think that was really important. And, to feel protected. They picked the biggest guy they could pick. If anyone's seen you, you're massive and, you're a force to be reckoned with. So now you have this, compassionate girl that cries all the time and this real strong man. It was a good combo. I just didn't realize it would just be us and Google Translate.
Yes, us and our cell phones.
Yes.
Yeah, that we'll get to that in a little bit. So all of a sudden, God opens all these doors for Calvary Fort Lauderdale to reach out to their church partners. We had the right church partners. We were put in a situation where we could directly help. We weren't partnering with, a Samaritan's Purse or something. It was our people going to the facilities, and it was us going to the border.
Yep.
And so that was crazy. That was
eye-opening.
It was God was opening doors and we had no plans going on a mission trip. The biggest mission trip we ever went on, we went to Key West after the hurricane, and we helped, clean people's yards and remove debris and things like that. Like that was the biggest thing that we had done as a couple. Mm-hmm. And the war kind of came quickly out of nowhere. And usually that's something that you watch in the news and you go, man,
I wish I could do something.
Yeah. What else can I do but pray for these people?
Right.
And we were put in a very unique situation very quickly where we went, hey, we actually get to go help with this situation. So I go over a week before you as this couple, as I've mentioned, they're missionaries.
They kind of transition.
Yeah, they're kind of
passing the baton to you.
Yeah, they're filling me in on all sorts of situations, giving me the lay of the land as their time over there is dwindling down and you and I are starting to rev up. And I land and I kind of land, I land in the evening in Warsaw. I don't remember what time it was, maybe 5:00 in the evening. And so I get over to the hotel. They're at a Marriott over there in Poland. And I basically just kind of run down to the little restaurant there, get a Polish version of a hamburger and, kind of sit there with this couple and they start giving me, okay, here's everything you need to know. Here are the locations of the train stations. Here are the locations where you can walk across the border.
Yep.
Here are
the refugee
centers. This is where buses and all sorts of things. These are the hot spots that you can go. But they also had a full 2 vans full of refugees. That basically what we were offering was, hey, if you have a place to go, we will foot the bill. We will go with you to the airport. We will book that flight to wherever in the world you need to go, and we will pay that bill. Don't worry about it, and you're on your way.
Hallelujah.
Or if you just needed a taxi ride, you knew someone in Poland that you could go to. Hey, no problem. We'll pay for the Uber. We'll pay for the taxi. We'll pay for whatever. Don't worry about it. You don't have money. No problem. Here's some money. Here's some food, whatever you need. You're on your way. But for the ones that didn't have anywhere to go, we offered them, saying, hey, we have 2 locations
right
that you can go to and you're welcome to go. You're welcome to keep your kids with you. You stay as a family
right
the whole time. But these people were so overwhelmed by what was going on with them. I remember one refugee that I talked to before you got there. She was in one of the refugee camps, and you could just she was there with one daughter and another daughter. So when I got there, it was about 2 weeks into the war. When the war broke out, she had a younger daughter with her in the refugee camp, but an older daughter who had just given birth was scared when the war broke out because she had an infant that she immediately fled. I want to say she went down to Romania. I can't remember. It might have been Romania. and this poor woman was sitting in a refugee center. These refugee centers, there was a company called Tesco. Think of it almost as a Costco, over there in Poland. But the name of the company was Tesco. And I don't know if it was several locations had gone out of business or the whole thing had gone out of business. But basically, they set up the refugee camps inside of these more or less Costcos. Mm-hmm. So it's a giant, empty, what it used to be a department store. And this woman was so frazzled and fragile.
Yeah, of course.
To paint the picture, she was so worried about her daughter and her grandchild that I walked up to her and just simply asked a yes or no question of, can I take you somewhere so that you can have a shower? Like, I don't mind renting a hotel room, taking you to the hotel. You can shower and I'll bring you right back. If you have somewhere that you want to go to, just the simplest gesture of, can I take you somewhere to shower? She literally couldn't say yes or no. And she just broke down into tears in front of me.
My heart.
That's how frazzled these people were that we were dealing with.
Yeah.
And,
I think you should also speak to the fact that you were told you can't say you're the church because people were coming in and infiltrating and human trafficking people in the name of, oh, we're a church, we're safe. I mean, the horrific things that they endured.
Yeah, that's part of what the missionaries, part of what the missionaries, when I was sitting in that Marriott eating that burger, they said, we're not allowed, don't you dare say that you're with the church, because the human traffickers have all thrown on shirts with crosses on them.
Horrible.
That literally would say the word church on the shirt, and they're walking around making the exact same promise that we are, that they have places where people can go where it's safe and they have work and so on and so forth. And they would snatch these people up from Ukraine and you'd never see them again. And about 2.5 weeks into the war, the police started figuring out what was going on. And so when the trains were backed up too, because everybody that's on the train, they had to check your passport. So what they would do is they would stop the train still in Ukraine, check everyone's passport, and then they would cross the border into Poland. But there were so many trains leaving that it was a slow process. It was, we just got back from Chicago. It was Chicago at rush hour trying to, drive on 294. It was the same thing with the train stations. And so what the police would do is they would check all the passports in the car, and they would make an announcement over the loudspeaker as they were exiting the car saying, when you get there, if you do not know the person that is offering you a place to stay, don't go with them, because there is human trafficking happening. And they literally rattled off all the reasons why you don't go. So we were fighting against that.
Yeah.
These
talk
human
about darkness.
Oh my gosh. The depravity of man was on full display when we were over there. Full display.
Makes my skin crawl, Mike.
Oh, just the things that we saw was horrific. And right at the border, everything, all the worst of humanity and all the best of humanity was right at the border. You had Jehovah's Witnesses everywhere in their tents,
and Catholic churches.
I don't remember so much of the Catholic churches being at the border. I definitely remember the Jehovah's Witnesses there. Mm-hmm. You had all the human trafficking going on there. You had the worst of humanity there. And then you also had, I don't remember what cell phone provider it was. It might have been T-Mobile. T-Mobile was at the border literally giving away free cell phones. It was prepaid cell phones that were valid for a month. And
that was cool.
T-Mobile was just, hey, we don't care who you are, walk up to us and we're going to give you a cell phone, and you got a phone that will work here in Poland, and you can contact your family, and it's free of charge for a month. I think it was T-Mobile. I can't remember, but that was amazing to see. You had all the free food you could imagine. There were World Hunger Organizations everywhere. And health organizations that were intense if anyone was injured. So
that was a beautiful thing to see.
That was amazing.
Yes.
So there was the best of humanity and there was the worst of humanity sitting there at the border waiting for these people. And so it's so easy for your emotions, for you to get caught up by your emotions, and you stop listening for God because you're seeing these things happening, and it makes you angry.
Yes.
You're turning around every which way. These are panic-stricken people that are trying to flee some dictator that has a problem with them for no apparent reason.
Yeah. Just wants the land. Doesn't care who he hurts and what happens.
And so we're there trying to help these people. So, before you get there, I'll never forget, we had like 2 vans that were filled with refugees. What you would do, so it really was every single day, it was just what doors is God going to open and what doors is God going to close. And you and I, what was so cool is basically every single day we were improvising what we were going to do.
Yeah. And for someone who is, both of us are very action oriented, like let's have a plan. What's next? That was hard. That was really hard.
Yeah. I mean,
you always call it pulling an audible.
Yes. We had to pull a lot of audibles because we absolutely made a plan the night before, saying, okay, where are we located in Poland? What do the border crossings look like? What have they been like the last few days? And that would give us a heading as to where we were going to go when we woke up the next morning.
But very open-handed.
Well, you learn that very quickly.
Yeah.
We learned that very quickly. So what you would do is you would go to one of the, you get a hotel that was close to one of the border crossings. And your goal is, when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to go to this train station, or I'm going to go to
this refugee camp,
or I'm going to go to this where you can walk across the border. You always strategically planned yourself so that you would get up in the morning, you could have a quick coffee and breakfast, and you were out hitting the road with a van. And let's say we would pull into a refugee center. It was amazing because that was the plan for the morning, but the Poland was amazing. The people in Poland were truly trying to help in every way possible. And
it was pretty amazing to see, and organized, much more organized than I could wrap my brain around, really.
And even though they were under immense pressure, they were still very polite.
Yes.
You didn't really come across any rude people of any kind, including the people that were serving at the refugee camps.
Yeah, the military was very
what
polite.
Can we do to help?
Yeah.
So
but
that
you also
was,
knew if they said no, you were like, okay.
It wasn't a no. It was a stern no.
Oh, yeah.
But you knew why, So we would get up and we would go to a refugee center or a train station. And if we went to a refugee center and, a bunch of trains had just come in and those soldiers were overwhelmed bringing in all the new people, that meant God had closed that door for that day. Mm-hmm. And you couldn't get upset about it. You couldn't anything. The soldiers just didn't have time to talk to you to find out what was going on and how you could help. It was, I'm dealing with tens of thousands of people. I wish I could explain to you guys that the train stations that were there, if I had to guess, I would say they were probably 2,000 square feet on the inside of the train stations. And they were having 100,000 people pass through per day in a train station.
Yeah, I didn't get to see any of that because I came a week later, but wow.
Yeah, so when I say these officers and so on and so forth were overwhelmed, they were overwhelmed. Poland doesn't have the infrastructure for this.
No.
Right, they're all one-lane highways at the border crossings. At best, a couple of them were 2 lanes. But they don't have the infrastructure for this massive influx of people. So we would go to a border crossing, and it was really, did God open the door today, or did God close the door?
Right.
Did these officers have time for us? or did they not? And if they didn't, it was okay. What's the next closest thing, or is there a place we haven't been to in a while that we can swing by?
So you did a lot of driving around before I got there to find
Tons
people.
of driving.
Yes, and not knowing how to read, signs or anything. I mean, it's stressful just in an environment where you're the foreigner, and you're trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B. I can't thank technology enough.
Oh my gosh! If it wasn't for Google Maps and Google Translate,
yeah, we wouldn't have been much help.
I have no idea what we would do. It was like I don't even know how to describe some of these situations. When you're in the refugee camp, again, Poland and Ukraine don't speak the same language.
Not even close.
It's not even. Yeah, it's there is no similarity whatsoever.
Even the letters in Ukraine language they're
drastically different.
Like you can't even equate it to an alphabet that you would know, that we would know. Yeah, it's just bizarre.
So it was amazing when we would get people's times, when we would get soldiers' times. They would do everything they could to help us.
Yep.
So one thing is, we would walk in and we would have a flyer, and on that flyer, on one side, what we were offering was written in Polish, and on the other side, it was written in Ukrainian. And so
I don't remember what was on the flyer.
Just what we were offering. Hey, we have a place in Italy. We have a place in Germany.
Okay.
Most people wanted to stay in Germany because Germany's closer than Italy. Italy's a lot further away.
Right.
So the castle we had there filled up much quicker. But we have this flyer. I can't read the flyer, right? I speak English. I can't read the flyer. People in Poland have to understand. I had to find an officer that spoke English and Polish, which was rare. They did not speak English. English is not a common language in Poland.
Yeah, but you had Google Translate, so you could speak into it and turn it around and show them and hope that it translated correctly.
We could, but we didn't with the officers. We always found someone that spoke English with the officers. That was when we were dealing with the refugees. Yes, you're 100% right. Like when you and I were there and we were dealing with the refugees, it was all Google Translate. But with the officers in the Army, there was always somebody that spoke English, at least broken English. So it was amazing how we would create these lines. You think of the game Telephone when you're a little kid, and the teacher would, have you line up in a straight line, and she'd whisper something in the front kid's ear, and then by the time we got to the back,
totally different.
There's polka dotted elephants in France by the time they got to the end of the line. So we start forming this translation line where I needed an officer that spoke English and Polish. And then we would need a second officer that spoke Polish and Ukrainian. So I would speak English to the person that spoke English and Polish.
Right.
That person would turn and speak in Polish to someone that spoke Polish and Ukrainian. And then that person that spoke Polish and Ukrainian would turn to the refugee and let them know what I had just said. So it was this 4-person game of telephone. And hopefully what I'm saying we're offering is being properly translated to the refugees.
And I want to circle back because think about the desperation that is happening when you're being told in the train station, don't say yes to anybody. And yet God is opening this door and people are saying yes. And that's really a step of faith on their behalf. And speaks to the just sheer desperation of where they're at and how hard it must be.
Yeah, and
to take that risk.
And the Polish government got very smart very quick. They did realize that people were there trying to help, and they did realize people were there trying not to help, to do the opposite. So what Calvary Chapel did was we actually worked directly with the Polish government to get ourselves basically, I'll use the word permit. I don't know that that's the right word or not, but we got official documentation from the Polish government saying these people are from the church. They do have something to offer, and our government stands behind them. So we did have that documentation, but that took a couple of weeks to get that documentation.
You had that before I got there.
Yeah, by the time you got there, the people in the train stations and so on, they got to know us because we went to the same half a dozen places over and over and over again. If you're working sex trafficking, you want to get those people, you want to get out of there. You don't want to be seen. Where we were seen there
over and over again.
Every few days, we were entering a train station going, hey, do you have any refugees that have nowhere to go? Is there any? And we would bring the officers chocolate. I mean, you're trying to create a relationship with these military people and so on and so forth, and the people, the conductors of the train and so on and so forth, so that when they overhear conversations, they can go, I know exactly who you need to talk to. Wait here. I'm going to go contact Calvary Chapel.
How many people did you actually have with you before I got there?
Probably 15.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a couple. It was, a van that, I don't know, seated eight people. Mm-hmm. So you have one driver in each. So now you're down to 7 people. Maybe we crammed an 8th or a 9th in each van. And we would go from the border. We would, hey, we have places to stay if you want. And they would ride with us from the border to Krakow or to Warsaw, and we would send them on flights. And like I said, if they had places to go, great. Here's the money for the ticket. Let's get you booked, and you're on your way. It's on us. And but for those people that didn't have any place to go, Germany filled up much quicker, like I said, because it's very close. Where Italy is, it's a little bit more of a trip. You're flying over water and so on and so forth. So people were more hesitant to go to Italy.
So before I got there, what was the biggest closed door that you saw?
It was just train stations and things that just, it was just relentless. It was the same door, God closing doors. People did not have time for you. Mm-hmm. You needed the help of someone in the train station, someone at the refugee center. You needed help from somebody that was there.
But it was just chaos.
It was just chaos. There were doors being slammed in our face all over the place. But I'll never forget the 2 missionaries that I was there with were there, and you're giving your pitch. It's like you can go to a trade show or something and you're there with your knife set and you're cutting the tomatoes and this, that, and the other. And you get a little crowd of people that gather around because you want to see this amazing knife. Well, it was kind of the same situation when a train would come in and the soldiers say, okay, we're going to, a bunch of people are getting ready to come through, get ready. And they would give you a bullhorn or they would make the announcement for you or whatever. And they would basically say, hey, if you have nowhere to go and you need help, these people are here to help. And you can go talk to them and they'll tell you what they have to offer. I don't have time to do it, but they do. You can sit and have a conversation with them. You're free to stay. You're free to go with them, whatever you want to do. So you would get on again, you would start having conversations and you're making, it's definitely not a sales pitch. We weren't selling them anything, but you are making a pitch to them going, hey, we have work. Your family can stay together. You don't have to worry about paying rent. You're going to have shelter.
Blessing.
Yeah, it truly was a blessing for the people that we were able to help. But the most amazing thing was these 2 missionaries that we were working with. They're there and they're giving the pitch. We were in a train station. And they're giving this pitch to a group of people that's trying to decide whether or not they want to come with us. And you see this old man that's got a hunched back and so on and so forth. And he kind of shuffles up. And even though we're talking to other people, you can tell that he's listening to our pitch, what we have to offer. And after we're done talking with this other group of people, he wanders off and grabs his 11-year-old daughter and grabs her, by the arm and says, come over here. I want you to hear this. And so we give them the pitch saying, we have a place in Germany. We have a place in Italy. And we can't speak their language. So they hear the pitch and they kind of more or less gesture to us like, hey, give us a minute. We need to talk about this as a family. And it was just this old man and this little 11-year-old girl. And we said, yeah, absolutely, no problem. And so you kind of see them take a few steps away, and they're sitting there talking, and clearly they're discussing whether or not they want to come with us. And it was the cutest thing you ever saw. This guy and this girl, they just kind of, after they're done talking about it, they kind of nod heads at one another going, yeah, let's do this. And they shake hands. They say, we're going to do this together. Oh, this is craziness, but we're in this together, you and I.
Yeah. Wow.
And come to find out it was a father and his daughter, and the mother had died of cancer many years prior.
Wasn't a grandpa and a...
No. Wow. It was a little, when I say an old man, he was old for an 11-year-old. He was probably 60.
Okay. Okay.
So he was old for an 11-year-old, but
to have an 11-year-old.
To have an 11-year-old daughter. But his wife had died a few years earlier from cancer. They were both heavy smokers. He was a very heavy smoker. But it was just adorable. And so they decide they want to go with us. And so we get them in the car, and we're driving to the hotel. And the little girl speaks English. We didn't know that when clearly the father, he understood a little bit of English, but he couldn't speak it well. He very select words. But when we got in the car, the little girl was fluent in English, could speak English up one side, down another, didn't have an accent or anything.
Wow.
She was an amazing little 11-year-old girl. So we start, when all this starts happening, we have to give feedback back to the church at Fort Lauderdale because the congregation wants to know what's going on. So our lead pastor says, can you tell us this story? Can you give me something? We're over there doing a bunch of different things. Can you give me a story of how we're helping? So we asked this little girl, what's the deal? What has happened in your life since the war broke out? And her dad, they didn't have money. So they were not able to take trains or anything. They had literally walked with their suitcases for 11 days.
Wow.
To escape Vladimir Putin and his army. It took them 11 days to walk from where their house was to the border. And when they got to that station, that refugee camp, they were absolutely exhausted. They had no money. They had been walking 11 days. The war broke out in the winter.
Yes.
So it was cold.
I remember it being very cold.
It was cold over there, and they had trudged through all this weather for 11 days and found us. And this little girl wanted to be a painter. And she had been researching when she graduated high school. She wanted to go to Italy. She had found a school in Italy where they spoke Ukrainian and taught art. And so when we said we had a place to stay in Germany and Italy,
her eyes lit up. Sure.
And, we didn't have a lot of time with all these refugees. It was all about moving people as quickly as possible. Right. So even just witnessing about Christ in the middle of all this chaos was kind of rare, to be honest with you, for us. Now, the teams that were in Germany and Italy, that was their job.
Yeah, we knew that they were going to a place where they would get the gospel.
Yes, but being on the front lines, we didn't have the opportunity. But when the little girl found out that we had a place in Italy and we represented the church, she asked the question, do you think God would cause a war to get me from Ukraine to Italy because he has something he wants me to do in Italy? And how do you ask a better question than that to start giving the gospel?
Sure.
And this little 11-year-old girl, we took her to the hotel that night, got her a good night's sleep, and then right next to the hotel was the shopping mall. So we took her to the shopping mall the next day and got her new clothes, and we got her this really cool little hat that looked like a floppy hat that an artist would wear. And we started kind of teasing her a little bit, but in a very playful way about how she looked like an artist and this, that, and the other. And she smiled so big. And her favorite snack was Haribo gummy bears. So, when we stopped and got gas, we got our little bag of gummy bears, and it meant the world to her.
Yeah.
But that was
shedding a light in the darkness.
But that was God really opening a door specifically for that young lady and her father to go over to Italy where she could be cared for.
Right.
Going, hey, I already researched this school. I already know all about it. It's over there. And, we were able to get her there.
And that's amazing. I didn't have the privilege of meeting her, but I remember you telling the story and them sharing it with Calvary and just the overwhelming sense of joy that it brought the congregation to know that there was help and that people were getting over to safety.
Yeah.
And getting the gospel once they got there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the stories that make you smile. There were so many stories of just devastation.
Yes.
That, you can easily get overwhelmed. And while we were there, we weren't just moving bodies. There was a lot of downtime. When something happened and God opened the door, it was time. It was clearly time to move.
And you moved quick.
And you moved fast, and you moved at any time of day because things were happening. I don't remember what the time difference was. I want to say it was like 8 hours, something like that, 6-8 hours time difference. So when it's, midnight over there in the States, it's, early evening. So things are still happening, even though it's midnight where we're at. Things could easily start happening. So we would field phone calls all hours of the night. We had to report back on a daily basis with the leaders that were at Calvary. What happened today? Here's what's happening. Is we partnered with all sorts of churches that were over there. And basically what was happening was Poland is on the west side of Ukraine. So people that were in Poland were all heading west to get out.
Right.
But all the supplies were coming to the western border and they were going east. So you had a mass exodus of bodies heading from right to left and a tremendous number of supplies coming from left to right. And so we were partnering with a lot of different churches. They would have refugees in the basement and supplies for the soldier on the ground floor. So it wasn't just moving people, it was also moving supplies, war supplies, armor.
We moved a lot of supplies, you and I.
Yeah, we did. And we would just meet up with random people in random cities in Poland and we deliver body armor.
Food and body armor, yes.
It was the strangest thing.
It really was.
You knock on the door of some person's house that doesn't speak your language.
And hand them body armor.
It was strangest thing ever.
Yeah. Yeah. I think getting the opportunity, when I got there, I had a family that stayed with us for a week, really, like to get them from point A to point B was like about a week. And I fell in love with this family. Like,
that's what's hard.
We hugged and embraced and cried when we sent them on the plane like they were our kids. Like, it was just incredible.
It was, it's one of those things when you're dealing with something so traumatic, the biblical counselors and stuff like that at the church were saying, hey, don't get too close to these people.
Yeah.
Because if they become attached to you and you have to send them out, they just walked away from their husbands, from their fathers, and so on and so forth. Right. They're very emotionally clingy right now. But Mike and Deb, you're not the two people that they need to be clinging to because you're going to turn around and let them go again.
Yes.
So we were under direct orders to not hug, to, not become emotionally attached.
Well, I'm sorry. I hugged when I sent them off.
Yeah, you did when they left, but you didn't until, at that point, that point, you were as distant. I know you were crawling in your skin.
So affectionate. And I'm like, I just wanted to love on these people. But yeah, we got an opportunity while you were dropping off body armor. You're like, well, you can just hang out with them. And I'm like, again, I don't have any idea of what to do. So we take the little boy to a playground and I start running around with him and doing the swings and the balance beam. And I just thought, well, if there's any sense of joy that can happen in the midst of this darkness, I want to bring it. And
He was a cute little kid,
He
too.
really was. He was adorable.
He was a little bit of a ham, too. I remember one time you were taking a photo of him. He was on this little rocking horse little thing. And when you were taking his photo, he just winked at you, like while you were sitting there taking his
so
photo.
Cute.
He was a little ham. He was a cute little kid.
Yeah, and it was joyful to be able to bring a little bit of normal into such a dark and chaotic environment for them. So even in that, I felt like God was giving them a little kiss from heaven. Like,
yeah,
I love you, I see you, and I'm going to give my love through Mike and Deb.
Yeah, and so I've done kind of the majority of the talking so far because I was mostly talking about that week before you got there. So let's kind of flip things over to you. Your day to get there, you're there like let's say I came on a Sunday, you came the following Sunday, something like that.
Yes.
I don't remember exactly. You had never traveled internationally before, other than like what was it? You went to like Mexico or something one time.
But never alone.
Yeah, you were always with other people.
That was like, put on your big girl pants and do what God tells you to do. That was very nerve-wracking.
And you're landing in a country, at least, everybody took at least one semester of Spanish when they're in middle school or high school. So a few words here and there, baño. And
totally different.
Yeah, Polish. So what is it going through your head as you're sitting there in Miami airport, ready to board an airplane for Warsaw?
Honestly, I can't believe it's just me and Mike. I kept thinking, like, Lord, are you sure it should be us of all people? Like, what? That was probably the biggest thing in my head. Like, why us, Lord? Are we qualified? And the answer is no. We weren't qualified. God
we were called.
Yeah.
We were called.
God
he was qualified. We were not qualified.
Not at all. My goodness.
I don't speak anything outside of English
at
all.
Neither do I.
So, and I've been to Europe and things like that. I worked at Accenture where I did get to travel the world. So, going to a different country, it didn't intimidate me, but this was a different thing for you. You were intimidated talking, when we were on the phone. When I was over there, you're like, Mike, I don't know if I can just jump on an airplane and get off in Poland. What do I do when I land in the airport there?
Be there? What am I doing? Yeah, I was nervous. But as soon as I saw your face, I felt safe, and that was good. And then when we got there, I guess God had closed doors for a day or two, and your dad actually suggested, why don't you go over? You're in Poland. When are you going to be in Poland again? Why don't you go to Auschwitz and just take a look at the history?
Yeah.
And that was like, whew.
So, yes.
There's life before Auschwitz and life after Auschwitz. I don't think once you go there, you're ever truly the same. Like, it was a devastating thing to be in the midst of a war, pulling out refugees, and yet we're going to Auschwitz to see a very similar thing. I mean, that's what played out in history was, just all these people in this mass exodus. And that was a really heavy way to start a mission trip for me,
And so what's happening is, in the United States, we typically take Saturdays and Sundays off. That's everybody's dream job, right? Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and you hope to have the weekends off as your career and so on. So we definitely didn't have that over there. I don't remember what it was, but we would take a day of rest. And that's what happened. The day that you landed was the day that I was taking a day of rest. Basically, what happens is you would fill up. You wanted to get the two vans that we had. You kind of wanted to get them full, and then you would go to the airport to get those people out. And once you got them out, you said, okay, this is now my day of rest. Whatever day of the week that landed on, that became the day of rest. And you would relax. You would do whatever you wanted because tomorrow you're getting up and you're starting to recruit to get your van full.
Sure.
So, yeah.
That was our day of rest, is going to, a former concentration camp.
It was also our anniversary. So it was such a beautiful way for us to celebrate.
It was. Oh, my goodness.
You said you wanted to do something unforgettable for our anniversary. So I took you to Auschwitz.
Oh,
and
goodness.
It was staggering because earlier I referenced, we were kind of making a pitch. And the pitch was simple. We have a place for you to go. Families can stay together.
Yeah.
There's work there. And then
You're going to have food and a shower.
yep, you're going to have food, shower, kids stay with you. There's work there.
Yep.
And we were telling the truth. All the things that we were saying was 100% true. We had that.
It was very eerie to know that that same pitch happened all those years prior.
And that's what we found when we were at Auschwitz. I knew it was going to hit me. You don't go to something like Auschwitz. You don't go to Poland in the middle of a war trying to help without knowing that mission trip is going to change you. And it did.
Yeah.
You also know that Auschwitz, when you go to it, there's no way like you said, there's before Auschwitz and there's after Auschwitz.
It was devastating.
And the pitch that I was referencing earlier that I just gave you, what we learned going through the tours, when you take the bus and you arrive at Auschwitz, you drive through, there's in all the photos of Auschwitz, there's this gate that has a tagline over it. It's a metal, cold, ice cold looking gate. And it says,
foreboding.
Yeah, very foreboding. And it says, and I'm going to butcher the German, but it's something like, "Albeit mach free." And what it means is work will set you free. And what Hitler was offering was, hey, get on these trains. He had all these trains that would take people to Auschwitz. If you get on these trains,
you'll be with your people,
you don't have to separate. You can stay with your children. Everyone stays together.
We'll give you work.
We're going to give you work. And literally, as you're pulling in, there's this metal slogan that says, "Work will set you free." And he's literally every promise. He'll feed you. He has places for you to sleep. Your family stays together. There's work. All the promises that I had been making since I got there to all these refugees. And remember the state of the refugee that I told you about at the very beginning, that when I asked her whether or not I could take her somewhere that she could shower, she couldn't even answer yes or no because she was so fragile. She broke down and started crying. That's how delicate they were. And 70 years ago, Hitler was making these promises of the exact same promises that me as a member of the church was making. And he was sending them to Auschwitz. I don't remember the percentage or the statistics, but it looks similar. It's something along the lines of 95% of the people that went to Auschwitz were dead within 2 hours. People don't realize that. Most of them went straight to the gas chamber.
Right.
And when we would pick up the refugees, what was amazing is,
I just want a shower.
Yeah, the order of everything was, get me to the hotel. First thing I got to do is I got to shower.
Right.
Then the second thing I got to do is I got to eat.
Right.
And then the third thing I got to do is any number of things.
Right.
If you did that out of order, they were all off. If you took them to eat before they could shower, I don't care if it had been 3 days since they had a meal.
Yeah.
If you tried to feed them before you tried to give them a shower, they literally sat there miserable the entire dinner, didn't say a word, nothing. You needed to get them checked into their hotel room, give them a few hours to shower and get their wits about them and talk as a family.
Yes.
And then meet us downstairs for dinner in 3 hours,
right.
Whatever it is.
That's why the gas chamber being modeled after a shower. I mean, that's what he did. He made it look like a shower, and there's hooks for your towels. Like, seeing that was so devastating.
It was eerie because that's exactly what happened. Hitler had a God complex, and he would sit there when people would get off the train. His men would sit there, and if you went to the right, you were good to work. You were healthy. Basically, all women, all children and unless you were there for experiments.
They had women working too. I mean,
a few, but it was much more men. They needed labor. You know, they were fighting a war, so mostly men were the ones that were surviving. But if you were too healthy, you know, they just didn't feed you and so on and so forth. If you had anything like me, I have asthma, I would have been, nope, you're straight to the gas chamber. But that's literally what it was. Is that, you know, the refugees we were dealing with, the very first thing they wanted was a shower, and Hitler knew that. And as soon as you got off that train, you had been on a train for days, going through heat, going through cold.
Yeah.
You wanted a
11
shower.
days walking to a border. That should tell you everything you need to know.
And Hitler knew that. And it was so infuriating that he created this image that's a gas chamber, but he disguised it as showers because he knew everybody would run in there.
Yeah, the insidious evil, it just really hits you when you're there.
Yep.
And you realize just something, like that it could really shift how you look at what's normal in your own life.
When you think mankind is good, at the heart of us, we're good. I can tell you that that mission trip change. Not that I thought mankind was good at the core. The Bible clearly says we're not.
Right.
But I never was slapped in the face so many times with the
evil.
depravity of man.
Right.
And that's what, everything that we saw at Auschwitz. And then we see all this stuff happening, all these millions of people dying at Auschwitz and so on and so forth. And we see the strategy of Hitler. There was the same pitch that we were making. He was using that same strategy to kill millions of Jews and other people.
Sure.
He was using that same pitch. And then the worst part was the day after, we were right back at it going after refugees, and I was now given the exact same pitch.
It was eerie.
That's when that pitch became surreal. Before, I was just saying words.
Right.
Because that's what my church was offering. But after we went to Auschwitz and I had to walk up and give that sales pitch, hey, if you want to stay with your family, we're part of the church. Your family can stay together.
Yeah.
You're going to have work. We got a safe place for you to sleep. I'm sitting there going, Adolf Hitler taught all those people in his army to say the same thing that I'm saying right now. And how many people were led to their death? And how many of these sex traffickers are offering the same thing that we're sitting there? And I am not a Calvinist. I don't believe that to be correct. But I'm telling you what, that's one of those times where I sat there and the Calvinist side of Christianity, I had to fight that off. Sitting there going, God, you are in control of this. Predestination is, there's an eeriness to who are the people that are going to say yes to Calvary Chapel and who are the people that are going to say yes to a sex trafficker. That's when I really started to wrestle with, Calvinism and predestination. And I think part of that was the emotion of everything that I was seeing. And I was really struggling with, what I was witnessing. Just that, again, the depravity of man was so awful, that for a little while I had to struggle with that. I actually came back to United States and went to our mentor, Pastor Bill, and had that conversation going, okay, you're a former Calvinist. What I saw, how do you back out of this? Because I kind of that thought process is a little bit scary to me now. But it messed with my mind. A lot of things messed with my mind after that mission trip. That's different than going into a poverty-stricken area and helping build a church or build a couple of houses.
Yeah, no, it was traumatic. It was gut-wrenching to see, and I left feeling so incredibly blessed. Like, there are things that we truly, truly take for granted. We just don't think of them like we're entitled to them. Like, we're entitled to a hot shower every day. We're entitled to a bed to sleep in. We're entitled to peace. We're not entitled to any of those things. And for a blink of an eye, it could all be different. And you see the United States going through birth pains, and like, things are happening that are dark and scary here. And there's no day is promised to any one of us. And being able to run off to the store and grab a gallon of milk, you think you're entitled? You're not.
And I remember we stood in front of Calvary Chapel giving, kind of a debrief when we got back from the trip. And you had some very powerful things. Just when you're at Auschwitz, when you take the tour, they also take you to an area that's literally just the bags and the pots and pans that these people brought in. And that hit you really hard.
I think the pots and pans, excuse me, like, just even still thinking about it, being a mom, being a wife, and, thinking
these women thought they were going to be cooking for their family, that they were going to start over and cook for their family. And the pots and pans just broke my heart. I couldn't wrap my mind around the thought of my child being ripped from my arms and my husband gone, and everything is just not what I was promised. And all I wanted to do was take care of my family. I'm going to bring all my pots and pans and make a good meal when we get there. Like, the pots and pans wrecked me. Just wrecked me.
Yeah, they had piles of shoes.
Piles of hair. That's
Yeah.
how inhuman they treated them. They shaved their hair and sold their hair.
Yep.
Like, I couldn't. Gold teeth everywhere, glasses. Just, I think when you literally see it, and it's not in a history book where you're sitting in a classroom and you're, forced to go through a history class. And it's so different when you walk in and you see evidence that's tangible and you're like, wow. And I remember there was a picture on the wall. Oh, wrecked me.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. So let me kind of, if I can, give a little bit. So a lot of people, when they go to Auschwitz, I think that the gravity of the situation manifests itself where you can, a lot of different people feel a lot of different things. A lot of people will say, I feel demons everywhere and this, that, and the other. And I can honestly say I didn't feel the demons or anything while we were there until we got to the photo that you're about to explain. So go ahead.
It's a picture where the train stops and people are being sorted. Like you said, some to the death and some to a work camp. And there's a Nazi soldier on a bike that makes eye contact with the camera and has the most insidious, evil grin I have ever seen. I looked at that picture and I'm like, I am looking at the demonic. Like, it was captured in a moment in history, and it was there for everyone to see. And the look in this soldier's eyes was just so demonic and evil. Like, he was happy people were being murdered right on his watch. And I was just like, I was devastated. I was devastated at that picture. I still sometimes haunts me.
And there we were the next day, going back to the train station, going back to the refugee camps, trying to rescue Ukrainian people from Vladimir Putin, whose men that he was commanding had the same feeling as that man in that photo. That it was so eerie. And you better believe from that moment forward, as we're sitting there trying to help refugees, my prayers were different. Lord Jesus, please, please have this family say yes.
Yeah.
They want to come with us, because I'm literally going to deliver these people into your arms.
Yeah.
And you're going to care for them. That was my prayer with every refugee. And I said, if they don't come with me,
keep them safe, Lord.
Because Jehovah's Witnesses are here, sex trafficking is here, all this, people that want to take advantage of them in every single way possible. It could be the guy that's standing next to me smiling, that's making the same sales pitch that I am, but it's that guy with that demonic smile standing right next to me. It changed my perspective. And luckily, like you said, I think it was within 24 or 48 hours after leaving Auschwitz, we had a church partner that was there in Ukraine that sent us an entire family. And I think we sent them to Italy.
Yes.
But all the flights to Italy were literally booked up for days.
And so we got to spend some time with them.
Yeah. So we just got them off the border. We went into Poland, and we did life with them for several days. That's when when I was running around delivering food, and you stayed in body armor and this, that, and you took that kid to the playground. We took them shopping. But one of the coolest moments was the night before they're leaving.
Oh, that was so good.
The church calls us up and says, hey, their life has just changed dramatically. Please just go take them to a nice restaurant. So we probably took them to what would you correlate it to? Probably a Capital Grille style restaurant and we said, order whatever you want.
And they were so apprehensive. Like, are you sure? What do you mean? Anything I want?
And they were. My mother would say they order from the right side of the menu, meaning they're looking at the price instead of what's on the left is the steak or the chicken or the whatever. They're looking at the price. We had to go, guys. We got the bill. The church is covering it. You get whatever you want because tomorrow your life is changing. Tomorrow you're flying over to Italy, and things change. But for tonight, we're going to celebrate.
It was such a beautiful thing to see the gratitude and the awe. Like they hadn't. I guess through Google Translate, we figured out that they had never really gone to a fancy restaurant ever.
No, they
in their
had
whole
never
life.
had. They had never been to a restaurant like that.
The mom the grandma was the oldest, and you know, if she's in her late 60s, she had never had a fancy meal, and that really struck me. Like, wow, I get to witness somebody's very first experience with the beauty of being taken care of in a way that she's never had. And when the appetizer came out, her eyes got really big. And I'll never forget that when the dessert came out, she did a little like wiggle and a clap of her hands. It was so special to me, especially as, you know, an Italian woman that loves, you know, to feed people. And there is a joy and camaraderie over food. You see it in the Bible, you see it in lots of cultures, and I got to witness the sheer joy and gratitude of something that people in the United States take for granted. And it really brought me such a childlike awe of God that he would give them, again, and I said it earlier, like a kiss. Just here you go, daughter. Have this beautiful piece of chocolate cake. And she was so excited.
She was doing a little happy dance in her chair. And we didn't take many photos because you want to be very sensitive to you know what these people are going through and so on and so forth. But on one of the trips before you got there, one of the only photos that I took was this little boy that he had to have been maybe 4 years old, and clearly he hadn't eaten in quite some time. And we took them to a restaurant, and he ordered spaghetti, and he would get this fork full of as much spaghetti. It was way too much for his head, his size. It would get on the fork, and he would open his mouth so stinking wide and just shovel this spaghetti in. He was going to town on this spaghetti. One of the only photos I took, he was so stinking cute that I couldn't help but take a photo of this kid with just this giant fork full of spaghetti. And I kind of looked at his mom and winked and, you know, kind of indicated that I wanted to take a picture of him. And she knew why I was taking the picture of her son. She kind of rolled her eyes and she gave me the nod, like, yeah, go ahead. So I got this adorable picture of this little kid, you know, taking a giant fork full of spaghetti and just down in it, man. And I didn't even want to eat. I wanted to sit there and watch this kid eat. That's how much he was enjoying this spaghetti.
Oh, amazing.
You know, and you didn't know when the last time he ate was, but he was going to town on that spaghetti.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And I think the last story that we'll share, we kind of need to wrap up the episode, was so we get this family, and they have a Marriott that's connected to the airport, and they're flying out at like 6 a.m. So we got to get them into the airport super duper early. And so again, we go to bed kind of early, kind of not, but kind of early, because we know we got to get up early the next day. But again, things are still happening in the United States.
Right.
So I get a phone call at like 2:30 in the morning, and it's Calvary Chapel, and they say, look, one of the families that we helped get across the border to Italy a couple of weeks ago, they have gotten in touch with this one woman that's a refugee, and this woman wants to go to Italy. But there's a problem.
She ran out of money?
She was on a bus and only had enough money to get a ticket part way.
Didn't the bus get bombed?
So I forgot about that. As she was leaving Ukraine, the train she was on got bombed.
Yeah.
literally got bombed. And so she had to get off the train and go find a bus that would take her over to Poland. But after she bought the train ticket, she didn't have enough money. She had some money, but she didn't have enough money to get her all the way to Warsaw, I think is where we were. She didn't have enough. So she had to get off like several stops earlier. That's all the money she had. And Calvary Chapel calls me at like 2:30 in the morning. It's the evening in Fort Lauderdale. And they go, Mike, there is this woman.
Yeah.
I don't even remember her name. I barely remember her face. They said
I'll never forget her.
She's like 30 years old. And they give me a description. And we use, basically when we were over there with all the refugees, we were using all these apps over in Poland that help you track your kids. And what we would do is we would tell the refugees, okay, you're the kid and we're the adult. I want to know where you're at. That would help me find them. So it was through like WhatsApp or Viber or one of those chat apps. I get in touch with this woman. Actually, no, people in Calvary, Fort Lauderdale get in touch with this woman via one of these apps. They find her phone number and they're able to get in touch with her. And they said, where are you? And they get the approximate location of this woman. And they call me at like 2:30 in the morning. They said, Mike, go get an Uber or a taxi.
Yeah.
And give them. They had me write this thing down. It's in a language that I didn't understand with number. They said, give that to the taxi driver and ask him if he knows where this is. Because we think there's a refugee that's there, that her train just got bombed. And she spent the last dime she had to get that close to the airport. It was probably half an hour away from the airport. Give that location to the cab driver and see if you can go find this woman.
Yeah, so you're driving in the middle of the night, and I'm like, you're leaving? Oh,
Yeah.
we got to get these people to the airport. Like, I don't. You're like, you got to do it, and I'm like,
so, yeah,
okay,
so that's it.
okay.
So I give you, you're at the airport in the Marriott. So all of a sudden now you have a van full of refugees that now you have to get onto a plane going to Italy, and you don't know if you're going to see me again until after they're gone. I have to go get in a taxi that I don't speak the language. I don't know anything. I'm handing the taxi driver what looks like gibberish to me on a piece of paper.
Crazy.
Hoping that he knows what that means.
And you found her.
And we get there.
And again, I'm going to say this real quick. 3:00 in the morning, Mike comes walking out, and, this woman must have been so desperate because she's like, I have to get in the car with this total stranger because
there's two strange men. There's the taxi or Uber driver.
That's true.
I'm sitting in the back seat. She doesn't know either one of us.
Yeah.
But if I was a sex trafficker, she wouldn't have known any different.
I know.
How desperate is a 30-year-old woman at 3:00 in the morning in a country you don't know, that speaks a language that you don't speak? You have no money. How desperate do you have to be as a 30-year-old woman to get in the back of a car with two men that you don't know at 3:00 in the morning and trust that they're not going to take advantage of you and they're going to help you get to a safe place?
Yeah.
How desperate would you have to be as a woman?
As a woman, I don't know that I would have, with my past experience, I don't know if I would have gotten that car.
And there she was. She was literally on a street corner, staring down at her phone. And I don't remember what percentage of her battery life was left. It was a 10%. 10% battery life left on her phone. She literally had no money whatsoever. And
her
she had
whole
a
life
backpack.
was in a backpack.
And I'm telling you what, it wasn't a full backpack either.
No, it was like a purse-sized backpack. Her whole life.
That's literally all she had, and she's getting in the back of a cab with two strange men with the promise of a safe place in Italy. That's what she was holding on to. But thank goodness it was Calvary Chapel.
Amen.
And we picked that woman up.
God that delivers.
And so you're at the airport, and I tell the cab driver, okay, we got her. Let's go to the airport. And I find you, and you're there with the other refugees. And luckily at that moment, she was with her people again that spoke her language.
Yes.
They had spent days with us.
Yes. And probably, reassured her everything's going to be okay. But just, even that moment of like, I really had to go, okay, God, you're in control, because I don't know if I'm even going to get them to the right terminal. And they asked me like 3 times, are you sure this is the right place? And I'm thinking, I wrote everything down, and I had to look confident, because if I looked scared, they were going to be scared.
Yeah.
So I had to put my emotions in check. I actually had a poker face. You'd be very proud of me. And I got them to where they needed to go. And you showed up with the other refugee and just saying goodbye. And
Yeah, that's where we checked them in, and that lady that I picked up, that last minute refugee, I just gave her a big hug, and I gave her 200 euros so that she would, she
Have
could get a
something.
drink, she could get food. She had something, and we never saw her again. And it's the same with the whole family that we spent a few days with there that you got to know.
I have a Facebook page, and occasionally they'll have posts, so I know they're doing okay.
Yeah, we do know that they're doing okay.
Yes.
From what we understand. But you were a basket case at security, waving goodbye to the refugees.
Oh, it was so sad.
I thought you were going to lose it, man.
I really.
In the missionaries that were prior to us, the wife was the same way. She just absolutely lost it every time we went to the airport and we were dropping people off and they were going off to the next phase of their life. She lost it.
Yeah.
And it's not like I wasn't caught up in the emotion of it. It was more just so sobering to me, where I think, your motherly instinct and so on and so forth, you had just totally kicked in. And so many of these people were so young. The 11-year-old girl, the little 4-year-old boy.
Yep. And then we had like a 14-year-old, a 10-year-old, and like a 21-year-old, and mother and grandma.
Yeah, and the lady that broke down when I asked her if she wanted a shower, she had a place to go, and we wound up taking her to an airport. We flew her daughter to her, and that woman that was so frail and fragile, when I was talking to her, the instant that granddaughter was in her hands, and that granddaughter was probably a year old, she was a whole new woman when her daughter and her granddaughter were in her arms. And then all of a sudden, instantly, when we were leaving that airport and I was driving them to the home that they wanted to go to, but they were there as a family, there was laughter in the back seat. She had the granddaughter on her lap, bouncing her on her knee, and everything. The whole world had just changed. But 48 hours earlier, when I asked her, can I take you somewhere so that you can take a shower? She couldn't muster the strength to say yes or no. She just broke down in tears. Yeah, it was that was a mission trip, and God was opening and closing doors all around us. And when He said no, do you have the discipline to sit there and wait for Him to open a door?
Yeah. And know He's in control, and that He really has a much better plan than we could have ever orchestrated at all.
Oh my goodness. Just even getting the food. There were politics that were going on that were preventing us from getting food across the border, and we had to play this political game while people were sitting in a church starving. It was craziness. Everybody had their own agendas. There was 1 million people there, and there was 1 million different agendas, and we had to navigate all that. And in the midst of it, how do you keep your head, and how do you keep in prayer and say, God, you open those doors and we'll walk through them, and you close the doors, and we're going to come pray, and we're going to ask you what you need from us. But to have the discipline, especially when the war is going on and people are dying, do you have the discipline to sit still?
Yeah.
When God's going, hey, all the doors are closed right now. I'm working on something, and I know you're capable of moving people right now, but I'm working on something.
Yep.
That was some of the hardest times.
Yeah.
Some people that were over there, they were not able to sit still. But it definitely was a life-changing
It was.
time for us. And
I'm grateful.
yeah, me too. My goodness.
Very grateful that we answered the call.
Yeah.
And
We were in a rare situation where you had the vacation time from NASA. The church, they just said, Mike, will you go? Will you get your wife, and will you go? And my goodness, just the privilege of that is amazing. That's one of those things that I'll thank God for when I see him, going, hey man, thank you for trusting us with that.
Amen.
Because that changed so much for us, just so many perspectives.
really.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but we hope you guys enjoyed this story, a little crazy story of a month of our lives or so, where we got to do something just absolutely amazing, and wanted to share it with you guys because there were so many doors open and so many doors closed. And it's not this type of stuff that you're going to hear on CNN or this, that, and the other. That was feet on the ground, people trying to help other people.
Yep.
We didn't
Do
care.
God's work.
Yeah, we didn't care if they were Christian or what other religion. We didn't care. We were helping them. We were there to help them move on to another place. And that's,
to know that they would hear about Jesus Christ.
yep. There were lots of people. The people that we sent to Germany, we sent a ton of people over there to help them, pray with them, minister to them, create soccer leagues, all sorts of things for all these refugees. So it was truly a blessing. But anyways, great stuff.
It was
such a wonderful time in our lives. And thank you guys for listening. We hope you enjoyed some of that insight into, like I said, a crazy month of our lives.
It was.
But so many stories about opening doors and closed doors that we had to share it. So thanks for listening.
We appreciate you guys.
Yes, we love you guys, and we will see you on the next episode of Detours. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.